Part 2 about the girl who was obsessed with me. So like I said, she basically told me that those were her nudes, even though I took the pictures and I knew they were mine. But I was like, okay, whatever, I'm not gonna argue with her. Well, then I get a text from my boyfriend, and he goes, what the fuck, you're so weird, why would you send me somebody else's nudes? And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? And I tried to explain to him that I had no fucking clue why this girl was saying they were hers. But then he said that I was weird as fuck and he broke up with me. So like a week later, I see them walking around school together. And my friends tell me that they're now dating. And I really wasn't that mad about it. I was like, okay, maybe that's the only way that she could think of to get a boyfriend. Well, I forgot that my Instagram was logged in on his phone because he had super bad trust issues and wanted to make sure I wasn't cheating on him. So I text him and I'm like, hey, can you take my Instagram off your phone? And I saw that he read my text message, but I got no response. Well, a week later, you guys are never gonna guess what fucking happened, like for part 3. Part 3 about the girl who was obsessed with me. So like I said, I texted him and I got no response back. So I run into him the next day at school. And I'm like, hey, did you get my text? And he's like, text about what? And I was like, taking my Instagram off your phone? And he was like, oh yeah, Addie did it, don't worry. And I didn't think anything of it because, you know, I'm like, oh well, she's done torturing me. Well, I was very wrong. So in my first period, I went to go sit with my group of friends, because all 3 of us had that class together. And when I walk in, I realize that Addie is sitting in my seat. So I pull up a chair to the table, and they were all ignoring me and texting each other right next to me. So I was like, okay, what's wrong? And one of my friends goes, oh, nothing, just the fact that you DM'd Gigi and I's boyfriends, saying that we were whores and that they should date you. By the way, Gigi was my other friend. And after that, this bitch Addie has the nerve to make the comment, that's really fucked up. Why would you do that? So then I beat her ass and lost all my friends. Storytime about how I found out that my mom fucked my boyfriend. So a little background information. My mom had me whenever she was 15. So we were always super close because we were so close in age. Well, during my senior year of high school, I started dating this guy. I was 18, he was 20. Well, after dating for a little bit, it was time for me to go off to college. And we didn't want to do long distance, so we kind of just cut it off. And instead of going to college, he just wanted to work, so he stayed in my hometown. And he was pretty close with my mom too, because during my school year, he got kicked out of his parents' house and came and stayed with us for like a month. And we're gonna call him Bryce. Well, I get a text from my mother the one day, and she's like, hey honey, Bryce wants to know if he can come stay here. His parents kicked him out again. And I was like, no, that's weird. Like, we're not even dating, what the fuck? And her response was, well, honey, I'm a good person, so I'm not going to listen to what you say on this one. He's going to come stay with us. And I wasn't even living there at the time, and she was going to let him stay there, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my mom fucked my boyfriend. So like I said, my mom was trying to be a good person, so she let Bryce stay there. Well, then COVID hit, and my college was basically like, yeah, you guys can't stay here anymore, go somewhere else. So I packed up my things and I went home. And she told Bryce that he couldn't stay there anymore because I didn't feel comfortable with it. As she should. Well, then she started acting really weird. Like, she would leave the house at 2 in the morning and wouldn't come back until like 8 in the fucking morning. And the one night while she was making dinner, I saw a text from Bryce pop up on her phone. So I opened it and there were no text messages except one from Bryce saying, I won't, don't worry. But I didn't ask her about it because I trusted her. Well, the one night I was going to a party and I was in charge of bringing the alcohol. Well, on my way to the party, I realized I forgot the alcohol. So I pull up to my house and I see Bryce's truck outside. So I went around to the window, and in the living room, I could see my mom and Bryce fucking on the couch. I took a video, put it on Facebook, and after that, she was labeled a homewrecker in my small town. After that, I found out they had a whole relationship. Story time about how I almost died when I was 4 years old. So my mom was at work and my dad and I were at home. And my dad was watching TV while I was trying to do headstands. I don't know, guys. I thought I was an acrobat at the time. So anyways, I had a penny in my mouth. I know, it's super dirty. Don't come at me. I was 4. I didn't know. And my dad didn't know. And every time that I would do these headstands, I would roll over onto my back. Well, I rolled over and I started choking. And my dad looks over and I'm laying on the floor literally like freaking dying. He's freaking the hell out. So he calls 911 and I got rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. And the penny was sticking straight up at the time, so nobody was really worried about getting it out right then and there. And my throat was like holding that penny in place, so no, my dad couldn't do the Heimlich or whatever the heck it's called. Well, the penny flipped. and I stopped breathing, and everybody was freaking out, and they had to hurry up and get it out before I died. Story time about the guy who pretended to be gay in high school to get closer to all the girls. So it was the first day of my freshman year, and at lunch this guy came and sat with me and my friends. And we were super confused because he was like one of the popular boys. And we were like, oh, why aren't you sitting with your friends? And he's like, oh, because ever since I came out as gay, they don't want to be friends with me anymore, and they're being super mean to me. So we felt really bad, and we started getting to know him, and he was actually a really cool person. So we started inviting him to our sleepovers and everything like that. And because he was gay, we felt really comfortable getting dressed around him, talking about things that we wouldn't talk about in front of anybody. So like 2 months go past, and at this point he knows so much about us, like stuff that nobody else knew. Like, he even knew that one of my friends was born with both private parts, which is something that she never told anybody except for me and the girls in my friend group. Well, we're all on FaceTime the one day, and my friend goes, oh, have you ever seen boobs before? And he goes, no. So we all lift up our shirt, like, for part 2. Okay, part 2 about the guy who pretended to be gay in high school to get closer to all the girls. So like I said, we all lift up our shirts, and because we were on FaceTime, we couldn't see if he screenshotted anything. And then the one night we were having a sleepover, and he was really upset that night because apparently the popular boys were making fun of him. Because the only reason why he was gay is because he couldn't get with any girls. So me and my friends thought of a solution, but like we were just trying to be nice. And now looking on it, that is the dumbest shit that we've ever done. And we're all like, oh, well, why don't you just say that you did the nasty with all of us? And he was like, well, I don't think they'll believe it, even if you guys said, yeah, you did do it. So we were like, okay, then let's do it for real. So that night, we did the nasty, all 5 of us. So that morning, we all wake up and he's literally gone. Like, he didn't wake us up to say goodbye, which wasn't normal. So the weekend goes past. Monday, we go to school. And in the morning, my friends and I have time to walk around, and everybody's just staring at us, like for part 3. Part 2 of how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So she told me not to worry about it, and I was like, alright, whatever. So the next day, my boyfriend shows up at my house asking to get back together. Not a surprise, by the way. And of course I said, okay, we can be back together, blah, blah, blah. So that night while I'm in my room, my best friend's on the phone, and she has her AirPods in so I couldn't hear who it was. And she was like, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And when I asked her where she was going, she wouldn't tell me. Well, she left her phone at my house. And because she usually tells me everything, I thought that something sus was going on. So I went through her phone. And I see that she's been texting this guy Jay a lot. And as I'm going through their conversation, there's one text that says, I don't care if she finds out. Just sneak over to my house while you're there. So I check the phone numbers, and obviously it's my boyfriend. And her parents are really strict, like she was only supposed to be at my house that week, nowhere else. So I may have made up some stories that she had drugs in her bag, and that she was forcing me to do drugs with her. So her parents came home early from their trip, they sent her to military school, and I broke up with my boyfriend. Story time, my parents found out that I was dating a white boy. So a little background information. My parents are super strict, especially my dad. And on top of that, my dad thought that races should not mix. One of his sayings was, you don't see a blue jay fucking a pigeon. AKA, white people and black people should not be together. Sounds fucking stupid. Yeah, I know. Anyways, like I was saying, it was my freshman year of high school, and I had been dating this boy for 2 months. And of course, he was white. And we had to keep it super low-key because if any of my friends found out about it, they would have fucking told my dad. Now when I look back at it, those weren't good friends at all. Anyways, every Friday, my boyfriend and I would go to the movies. And we would go to this theater that was 45 minutes away because nobody that I knew would be there. The only person that knew that I was dating a white boy was my sister. Well, the one day after the movies, I couldn't get a ride home, so I had to get a ride home with him and his family. And as soon as I pulled up, my parents were waiting outside, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my parents found out that I was dating a white boy. So like I said, my sister couldn't come pick me up, so I had to get a ride with him and his family. And what do you know, as soon as we pull up to my fucking house, my dad is standing on the porch waiting for me. So I told his parents to drive around the block one more time while I called my sister and told her to distract my dad. So as we're driving up to my house again, I see that my dad isn't on the porch. So I run into the house before he could see me getting out of a white boy's car. So a few months go by and we're still dating, very low key. And the one night at 3 a.m, I get woken up by my sister. And she says, you better delete any pictures that you have of you and you know who off your phone. And you better come up with the story right now. because one of your friends took pictures of you walking with him in the hallways and kissing him behind the stairwell at school. So after I deleted everything off my phone, a few seconds later, my dad came into my room screaming his head off. He was so mad. I ended up getting my ass beat, and I also got grounded from my phone for 4 months. But after that, my mom ended up leaving my dad, and then him and I got back together. Storytime, my boyfriend caught me cheating on him with his older brother. A little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and him and I had been dating for about 3 months. And every day after school, I would go over to his house. Sometimes he would be late coming home, though, because he would have soccer practice. But I would go to his house anyways because I was friends with his sister, who was also in the same grade as me. Well, his older brother was a senior in high school. Well, the one day I went over his house and his sister wasn't home. She was tutoring at school or something. And neither were his parents. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was just gonna go home. And he said, no, stay, I'll be there in like 30 minutes. While I was sitting on the couch, his brother comes downstairs. So he comes and sits on the couch next to me and puts on a movie. And he could have sat anywhere because they had a big ass couch, but he sat right next to me. So we start talking, and a little bit into the movie, he gets closer to me. And one thing led to another, and then we were in his room. And literally 2 minutes later, we heard the front door open. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend caught me cheating on him with his older brother. So we heard the door open downstairs, and at this point we were both naked. So I ran to my boyfriend's room as fast as I could, and as soon as he came upstairs, he saw me without any clothes on. So then I had to play it off like I was ready to do the nasty with him. So for the next 2 weeks straight, I was going to my boyfriend's house and doing the nasty with his brother while he was at soccer practice. Well, the one day after his brother and I did the nasty, I fell asleep in his brother's bed. So my boyfriend came upstairs, and he didn't see me anywhere, so he was knocking on his brother's door. And we didn't hear anything because we were sleeping, so he just opened the door. And I woke up and he was screaming at both of us. So him and his brother got into a fight, like literally fist fighting. I was trying to break it up, but then I was also trying to put clothes on. And when my boyfriend saw me trying to get dressed, he took my clothes and told me to get out. And when I wouldn't get out because I didn't have clothes, so he literally grabbed me and threw me outside. And then he came back and threw a towel at me, so I had to walk home with only a towel on. Crazy ass story time about how I almost got away with sneaking out. A little background information. It was the summer of my sophomore year in high school, and my parents are super strict. Like, they had a tracker on my phone, they had a tracker in my car, they have cameras all over my house, and my curfew was 7:30 even on weekends. Well, this boy that I really liked was throwing this party, and I begged my parents to go, and of course they said no. So my friends and I came up with this elaborate plan on how I was going to sneak out of my house and go to this party. Well, one of my friend's brothers had his license. So at 11 o'clock, after everybody fell asleep, they parked in my neighbor's driveway. Before everybody fell asleep, I made sure to put my ladder up to my window from my bathroom. And because it was in the back of the house, there were really no cameras around there. Well, skip ahead, I couldn't get down the ladder. So my friend's brother had to come around and try to move the ladder. But I was still too scared to go down the ladder by myself. So her brother crawled up the ladder. And once he was on the roof, he tried to help me get down. Well, then he fell like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got away with sneaking out. So like I said, he fell off the roof. Let me elaborate on that. So while I was going down the ladder, my foot slipped. So he grabbed a hold of my hand and I started falling along with the ladder. So then he grabbed a hold of the ladder, tried to pull it back, but when he did that, he flipped over the ladder. Well, he fell through this glass table that was on the deck that was around my pool, and everybody in my house woke up. My dad came running outside. Oh, and her brother wasn't moving after that. So my dad called an ambulance, and my friend who was with her brother had to call her parents. And pretty much after that, I got grounded for a full year. I didn't have a phone or anything. They took my car away. They also drilled my windows shut. My friend didn't get grounded because her parents knew that she was going to this party. Oh, and her brother was in a coma for 3 months. Story time about the girl who was absolutely obsessed with me in high school. So it was my junior year in high school, and I'm just going to tell you guys the first story of how I knew that she was absolutely obsessed with me and wanted to be me. Well, I had been dating this guy for like a month, and I sent him nudes. Well, my nudes got spread around the school, and everybody knew they were mine until this one girl, and we're going to call her Addie, started saying that they were hers. I guess one of my friends was talking about it in class and they were like, OMG, did you hear that her nudes got leaked? AKA mine. And Addie was sitting at the same table and she said, no, those are my nudes. And at first I thought this girl was just trying to be nice. I was like, oh, well, that's nice of her, you know. Like, maybe she's just trying to say that so that way nobody will bully me, I guess. Well, the one day I texted her about it. And I was like, hey, like, you don't have to do that. It's fine. I'll take responsibility for it. I did it. And she was like, what are you talking about? Those are my nudes. Like for part 2. Story time about how I found out that my mom was sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So it was my junior year of high school, and everybody knows that your junior year is the most important year of high school. If you didn't, well, now you know. My brother was in his senior year of high school, and when he was a junior, he had the same teacher, so he knew how hard the class was. So he would stay up with me every night helping me to pass my history class. Well, the one day I'm at school and I'm taking a test, and I literally did not know anything on the test. And I studied the night before for literally 4 hours straight. So